Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity, a show about weirdos, with your hosts, John Fahey and Darren Peter.
Hello, folks. My name is John Fahey. You are listening to Profiles in Eccentricity, a show about weirdos. I am joined by the most gorgeous co-host one could have. A man named?
Aaron Pita, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about me?
That's your name.
Yeah.
That's your name, you
I
sweet boy.
am pretty, but I am not smart.
You're not. You're not. That's why I have to teach you things on this program.
I don't know where else I would learn such fascinating things.
I have a bit of a doozy today.
Are you okay?
No, I'm not okay, but this guy is really not okay that we're going to talk about.
Yay!
I'm going to tell you about a man named Doc Dart. Doc Dart.
Sounds like a superhero villain character.
It does. That's his real name. His given name. He was named after his grandfather, who was named after like the actual local doctor that they liked,
Yeah.
and so they named this kid Doc, and then his grandson was named after him. And Doc Dart was born in 1953. He'd be 64 now, and he was in Lansing, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born into the family that created Dart National Bank. Okay? Massive national bank. And that started by the great-grandfather. The great-grandfather's brother started the styrofoam Dart. You know when you get a coffee cup?
No way.
And it says Dart underneath it?
Yeah.
That started by this guy's family.
All right, so this guy's coming from a pedigree.
This guy is coming from, an astonishing amount of money and very much in line to take over the bank through just sheer nepotism, you know? So he's born in 53. Around 1964 is like when he first hears the Beatles, right? And this is like, music is like his first kind of, big passion. And you gotta remember, like, a lot of early 60s, mid-60s stuff, it was so political. It was so tied to the anti-war movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he's getting politicized through art. He's getting into art, and he's getting into politics at the same time. And, he's grown up, like something of an enchanted life, but he does become disillusioned that all of these things that we're told as Americans that are true and virtuous are not really true.
Mm-hmm.
That the freedom enshrined is often corrupted and most of the times just an outright lie.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, he's getting into he's into Jimi Hendrix and stuff after that. He's playing in bands. He plays in a band called Kilgore Trout.
Okay.
Right. And next thing you know, punk comes around, the Sex Pistols. And then he feels like it's very political and it kind of leans back to that early 60s stuff because he felt like all of the 70s shit got very me-centric and, just drug-addled. And he hates that shit. He's like, he hates, the pot-smoking Buddhist. Like, he's equally as disdainful of leftists in his mind as he is the hawks of the right and the Republicans, etc. So he gets really into punk. He's really into Devo, especially.
Great.
And then what America kind of did with punk, one of the things besides, the various offshoots like Devo and Talking Heads and stuff like that, was hardcore punk, where it became very much more intense and aggressive. And, at this time, he's been coming up in the bank as, a teenager. And, he was very politicized, but, he went to Michigan State University and got a degree in anthropology. And 2 years after that, he got married. And a year after that, he has his first child.
So he's in his mid-20s now.
This is more like actually when he starts his first punk band, he's 28 and has a family.
Wow. Okay.
But before this, his in 1976, he's he's like a weirdo hippie guy that's sailing through the ranks because the whole point is to give him the Dart National Bank.
Yeah.
And he's just depressed and a weirdo and nonconformist. He's got a gross beard and long hair, and they're like, get the fuck out, where you've had enough of you. He just gets disowned by the family. And he ends up trying to get unemployment benefits, and they deny him his own family, and he has to sue his dad, right, just to get unemployment. And so, at this point, so he's now exploding into the whole, like, the punk thing and stuff like that. And he's angry. I mean, he's just angry mostly politically. And he starts this band with his cousin and a couple of other guys he knows called the Crucifix. Okay? And
is it Fuxx?
No.
How do they spell the Crucifix?
Yeah, it's Fucks.
Oh, wow.
So they're playing in Lansing, Michigan, and he would, I mean, just be a maniac. He would cut himself up with razors on stage, broken glass. He would call the cops on his own shows just to create fucking mayhem.
Yes.
He's just like a lunatic, and he sings in a shrill, insane way. The songs are like "Cops as Fertilizer," "John Hinckley Was Right." I mean, just extremely, extremely political. And the thing is, you gotta understand is there's wildly political hardcore punk bands, and there's super apolitical punk bands, but they all agree on one thing: fuck the cops.
Right.
They all hate the police.
Yeah.
So he starts getting in run-ins with the cops and, like just saying things while his friend's being arrested and realizing he doesn't have the right to say those things, which I think was really shocking coming from an extreme white privilege background.
Right.
So then he's so, like, mortified by this lie that he can't stop waging the war in his mind that these people are so fucking wrong and everything is so false, and that his family are the kind of people that uphold it.
Right.
So, like, one of the times he goes to jail, he has a party at his house. It's called an Ozzy party, where they're going to play every record that Ozzy Osbourne ever appeared on, right? And a local band wants to play, and he thinks it's going to be fine. And the cops come, but the cops come en masse and swarm this whole fucking thing.
And he did not call them.
No. And they also, but he's known now to them. And they're like, they kind of have it out for you, because it's Lansing. It's still a small enough town that you can know who the troublemakers are. And the cops come, and he does this thing where they're raiding the whole thing, and he just goes out the back door of his own house and grabs a beer and heads to the lawn and starts watching as if he has nothing to do with it. And the cops take him down and, like, they break one of his fingers, like, in front of people.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like, because he's talking shit. This guy cannot stop talking shit. Like, he's a lunatic.
Yeah, well, there's probably some self-loathing there, knowing that he kind of comes from the establishment.
Exactly. And then, he's rebelling just so hard from it. But it's really, like, it's really a matter of, it's really unfair and really wrong. That's like the most resonating thing in his mind that makes him so compelled to fight against these things. And he gets seen by one of the biggest punk bands of the day. They end up playing a show with them, the Dead Kennedys. And they're playing for somewhat more of the meathead hardcore audience. And the singer of the Dead Kennedys, Jello Biafra, is watching him, and he's like, the bottles are just raining down at this guy. He can't stop. He knows exactly how to needle these meathead idiots, and he keeps getting they want to kill him, and he's like, he somehow keeps falling into the crowd because he would dive from gigantic heights right on these people, and, like, just no regard for his own safety at all, and he would still somehow come out unscathed. Like, they wouldn't be able, you'd get away from beating the shit out of them, and he would keep going and going and going, and Jello, of course, Dead Kennedys were a super political punk band, and they were like, we got to sign these guys. So in 1984, they put out the LP, and they just are like one of the most legendary incendiary bands ever in hardcore punk. He and it was all because of him. They were so combative, and he had so little fear, probably because he came from one of these things. But, like, when he went to jail for the party, the Ozzy party, he loses the case because he's like, he's suing the police department, and he recognizes the judge as one of his dad's friends. So a couple of years later, the band is breaking up, and he's such a mess. You got to remember, the whole time he's doing this, he's married with children.
And he's a 40-year-old man.
Well, no. Now he'd be like 30 to 32, let's say. Okay. And so the wife is like, I'm going to take the kids and leave, and she, follows through on the threat. And, he's doing other stuff at this time where he has a thing called the Lansing Police State Journal, which is filled with photographs of dead cops, like, celebrating their death.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I mean, he's being as inflammatory as you could possibly be.
Well, he's being punk all the time. He's all the time punk.
It is. Yeah. It's
never not punk.
Right. Exactly. And then kind of goes into a depression. And on the other side of it, now he's got no band and he's just got a house, and it's kind of, it's like at a T-junction, and it's at the top of the T, right? So all three of these streets are great viewpoints for his house, and he just was in this house alone, and he's really fucking depressed. He's been depressed, like, since he got fired from the bank, when he was just schlubbing around, being gross. And he comes out on the other side of it, and he goes into the 90s, and he's just like, he's a huge baseball fan. And he starts a little baseball card store, right? And yeah, I mean, the last thing you think he would do. But he starts this little baseball card store, and he's, you got to remember now, it's Clinton time. And the rage of Reagan has subsided a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Things are not good, but they're a little bit better.
Right.
Which is something I understand very well. It's like the Obama years.
Yeah.
You have the rage of Bush.
Yeah.
And then you're like, things aren't too good, but they're better.
Right.
During the Obama years.
Mm.
And then you get to Trump, and all that rage is back.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a whole new fucking person.
Yeah.
So essentially, this is what happens to Doc Dart. But during those happy years, the Clinton years, he has his little baseball card store. And he's still politically minded, and he's looking at Lansing, his town, his hometown. And he sees that Lansing is 5th in the nation for rape. And there's a city council election going on. And he decides to run for city council, and he thinks that Lansing is going to be like, fuck you. Like, we don't. And nothing comes up about it. Now he's just known as the memory of people is actually very short. And they're just see him as the baseball card guy now. Now he's
not the self-mutilating.
Yeah, not the guy
anarchist.
Cutting himself up and calling the cops so he can fight them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This guy's like, I think of a weird, like, even more demented, psychopathic Bruce Wayne.
Right, yeah.
I come from this rich family with a name, and I leave everything behind because I learned the world is full of shit.
Right, and I moonlight as a lunatic.
Yeah, beating people up in the dark.
Right. So he's kind of living like an agoraphobe otherwise, though. He's pretty low-key.
Good cover.
And he's got the back of his land, even though he's at this big T-junction, the back of his land at this house is very much wilderness. I mean, you get deer that just would come right up, and he kind of, the family's away. He can see his kids and all that. But he has a lot of time where he's just, like, alone and with these animals. And that's, like, his, like, relationships because, like, people don't really work out for this guy.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't work out for them is a more accurate way to say it. And anyway, coming back, I'm just giving more background. While he decides to run for office for city council, and his uncle comes to him from the bank. And he stops by because word of mouth travels back to the family that has disowned him. And the uncle stops by for a frank chat to say it would be too embarrassing for the family if he were to run for public office. And he's hurt by this. And his way of coming back to it is like, maybe I should just run for mayor instead. So he runs for mayor, and he pledges as part of his campaign to donate. The mayor has an annual salary in Lansing at this time of $67,000. And he pledges to give $30,000 of his own money per year to build a rape crisis center in Lansing. And he goes to the primary. He gets 5%. And he's just laughed off as like a jerk off. But now keep in mind, it's really funny. During this campaign, they did not bring up his past. They did not use that against him while he was running. But the incumbent mayor and his opponent, the Republican and Democrat, they are in a dead heat. And Doc Dart calls both of their campaigns. And he says to them, 568 people in this city voted for me, and you guys are deadlocked. If you will build my rape crisis center, I will endorse either one of you. Mm-hmm. And they both shrug him off like he's a jerk off. Then those two candidates go on public radio for a debate. And who calls in but Doc Dart with the same offer?
Ugh.
And they again shrug him off on the air. 2 hours later.
Yeah, bad move.
2 hours later, the mayor comes walking into the baseball card store and says, let's do it. And Doc Dart endorses him. And the mayor wins re-election by 444 votes.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Rape Crisis Center gets built, and Doc Dart serves on the board.
No way.
Yeah. So then, we're back to at this time he's starting to realize that, you know, he is a self-destructive person, and he's getting into what could be called some kind of spirituality. But keep in mind, this is from a guy who thinks Buddhists are jerk-offs.
Right.
You know what I mean? He hates all that kind of stuff. And he's quit drinking, you know, because a lot of the mania was, you know, heavily alcohol involved. And he is sitting at home when the attacks of 9/11 happen. And before an hour goes by, he gets like a bunch of tar paper and makes a sign outside of his home facing this T-junction that says, September 11th, justice is served.
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, the bodies are not cold.
Yeah.
Definitely. Those fires burned for a while.
Yeah,
the bodies are not nearly cold, or maybe even dead.
they haven't hit the ground.
Right. And this guy's saying justice is served because, I mean...
Well, he's so anti-establishment in American form.
But also the thing is that he's viewing the world through the punk prism of, you know about the atrocities the United States government has killed. If you are into this kind of subculture, you know about what happened in El Salvador and our role in it. And it's never talked about. And we keep droning on about freedom and democracy, and we can't stop supporting the most torturous, brutal, mass slaughter regimes that further our own interests. So he again feels obliged, as a person of privilege, to speak up and say, yeah, sometimes the third world hits back.
Right.
And it's not popular. I mean, this is Lansing, Michigan.
On September 11th, people aren't ready to hear that?
Yeah, and within a couple hours, a policeman knocks on his door, and it's the cops, so, you know, they have a storied history, and basically the cop is saying to him, you know, I can't deny you the right to say this, but I can't police just your house. Like, these people are infuriated. And so he starts just adding more signs. And do you mind if I read you some of the signs?
I would love it if you would read me some of the signs.
This is one. Democracy, a myth. Freedom, a superstition. Human life is not sacred until all life is sacred to humans. U.S. troops terrorize as cowards from the skies. They should be in body bags.
And this is post his spiritual awakening.
This is the beginning. And I mean, he just can't. You know, I feel like because I come from, a place where, I would listen to Noam Chomsky. I would know about, Iran-Contra and the terrible things the U.S. government's done and all that stuff. But small-town Main Street Lansing, Michigan does not have a fucking clue about that stuff.
Right.
And if they were properly educated, they might be like, okay, yeah, fucking fine. But they're not, and they're angry because this is the most patriotic the country's been since fucking Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
You know? And he's just saying, no, fuck you. Like, we're wrong. And it's just at the absolute moment that you can't say it.
Right, he was just waiting for it.
And he keeps saying it.
Well, you need those guys because I think, I didn't get into that type of stuff, the Chomsky and the kind of true history of the United States type of stuff.
United States imperialism.
Until after 9/11, and probably because 9/11. That's the weird thing about it.
Right. Well, you go searching for answers because how could you do this?
Yeah.
Why would you ever do it to us? We're the nicest of all.
Yeah. And then you look and you see all the atrocities.
Right. I mean, yeah. This
more
is
signs.
I got two more. This is Bush, white trash imbecile maggot corporate slut. But this is my favorite. Patriotism reflects a secret wish to be sodomized.
These punk guys, man, they have such a great way of just like inflaming and picking off scabs and putting salt in the wound while it's still fresh. Like you have this. I feel like you told me a story about some guy at a punk show yelling at some skinheads. Is that a story?
Yes.
Is that anything you can tell?
Right. Well, that was from the direct polar opposite of the spectrum where you're trying to inflame people in a distinctly anti-PC way, by just saying a lot of homophobic slurs and stuff like that. But it's almost It was the singer of the band was from a band called Anal Cunt from Massachusetts.
Crucifix, Anal Cunt.
All right,
Following
but
along.
Anal Cunt were distinctly looking, because things were so political at that time, that they were like, let's go the other way, right? So even in Michigan at this time, when the Crucifix were around, you had the Meat Men, and the Meat Men were just talking about like being like metalheads fucking chicks, but it was just to piss off punks.
Right.
So there was a lot of these bands that thought the way they could be the most punk was to piss off other punks, and Anal Cunt was like that. And so they would say a lot of inflammatory things, which then got them like a racist audience, which they wanted to piss them off too.
Right.
So at one of these Anal Cunt shows, this is in the 90s, an entirely different time. This is a total sidebar, but Anal Cunt were playing a show, and they had a heavy guy with them because everybody wanted to kick the shit out of them. So they brought one of their meathead, big, tough guy friends to protect them. And in the show, there's a bunch of it's at a college, by the way. It's like, so it's just a bunch of people that are like, let's see what this crazy shit is about.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of Nazi skinheads in the back, and the singer from Anal Cunt points to the Nazi skinheads from the stage and says, "Get up here, you fucking wiggers!" Which, of course, incenses the Nazi skinheads.
It's the perfect
in
thing to
1,000
say.
years would never expect to be called wiggers. So
And it hurts so bad.
they go completely mental, and then this big heavy they've got with them just comes to the front of the stage and flashes a piece. He's got a gun tucked in his belt, and they're like, "Ah, shit."
He got us.
But I mean, that's a lot of the thing too, is that a lot of people that are drawn to punk are amused by people being irate and challenging people, and how much people are not willing to be challenged, especially in America. You know what I mean? You know, you got a way of thinking, and do not challenge that, or it's my pride. Whereas I think like in Europe, people are much like more like, no, please challenge me.
Let's discuss.
Well, yeah, I'm open to thinking of other things. So
Right, and in this country, there are snowflakes on the left and right.
right, absolutely, yeah, you can't shake them because they can't handle it.
Right.
Otherwise, they feel like everything comes crumbling down.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, that was one of the reasons Jello Biafra, who was, in a very inflammatory band, the Dead Kennedys himself, was like, he's like, I just saw this guy on stage, and he's taunting these meatheads, and they can't get him. And I was just like, I have to put this guy on my record label. And when this is when the band was still around, of course, and there was a show where now they have a record out, like 1986, and the Dead Kennedys come back again. And to Doc Dart's immense disappointment, the audience loves the Crucifix. And so he just goes on the mic talking about what a sad, pathetic disappointment hardcore punk is. And the bottles start raining again.
And he is
smiling ear to ear.
What a fucking sociopath.
Couldn't be happier.
The crashing of bottles and tomatoes and rotten lettuce is his adulation that he so
seeks. Well, it's
seeks.
something like we're getting somewhere, and there's a lot of his personality is like, I want to see more social experimentation.
Yeah.
Everything's so homogenized. People are so not willing to be challenged. Let's just keep doing this.
Right.
So that's a big part of his thing. And so he puts out all these signs, and this Aaron, this period is like from September 11th to October. And keep in mind, the patriotic fervor only increases. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And at a certain point, the cops come, and they kind of bully their way in his door, no warrant.
Well, of course, that was totally acceptable at post 9/11.
And they're like, we think you're a danger to the community. And I mean, he's talking about violence. He's talking about abortion now. I'm pro-abortion. Like, I hope all these children die because of the sins of this country. Like, I mean, very explicit. Like, fuck your Christian bullshit. Kids should die. Fuck the troops. Everything you can't say in America. He's saying all of those things. So there is hints of violence in it. And also there's some other things like where he's saying, like, I'm the Messiah. And you're like, huh? Right?
Oh, no.
So he's throwing some of that shit in there, too. And
which maybe, like, is just another one of his inflammatory statements, right? Like, if I say this, then they'll really hate me.
Exactly. So he's now got it to be so bad, the cops that come take him to the station to get him committed. That's the plan. And it is a plan.
It's a good one.
And so he's arrested and he's in a cell and he's going to meet this doctor and he's like, I just have to do all these breathing exercises to calm myself down because they do know how to draw his ire. I mean, these are the cops. These are like public enemy number one as far as he's concerned.
Yeah.
And he passes the test. You know, they're like, yeah, he's not insane. So they just give him a taxi home. But, I mean, the rocks are coming through the window. Halloween, I mean, the people are just going at it.
He must have loved it.
I mean, so I think when it became like, I open my door and I start getting shot with paintball guns, and which happened, you know, like that shit was happening. It was like, okay, yeah, this is getting a bit over, and you can't call, were you going to call the cops? You already know that they're not down. So he still talks to them, though. He's still saying, you should be doing this. If the law was the way the law is supposed to be, I would be able to say whatever I want and I would be immune to violence, but it's false.
Right. And so the signs I have on my lawn are true.
Right, yeah, and are we doing this Constitution thing or not? Do I have the right to free speech or not? Because you guys are fucking mobbing me. The cops and the people. And there's multiple death threats coming in the answering machine. People just stopping by to say, hey, something's going to happen. Right. Like, we're going to do something.
All the while he's serving on the board of this rape crisis center?
Well, yeah, that's more 90s time, right? Okay. So, but this is, you know, he's just more at home now, just enjoying inflaming public opinion and, you know, feeding deer out his backyard. They come right up and they feed them. And that's another thing I got to tell you is that he's so involved with the animals on the property. This guy that interviews him, a lot of this article that I drew from was from a guy named Sam McPheeters, who was the singer of a punk band himself called Born Against. And he interviews him, and Doc Dart says to him, he's like, I could tell you this, you know, like the deaths and the births and the new arrivals and the disappearances of the raccoons. He's like, it'd be 5-10 days for me to tell you that whole saga of the raccoons on my property.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's super involved in that world, but then it's like, you know, his kids come by and he's like, fuck, I gotta do something here because, I mean, now my family is like getting affected by this. And I already pushed them away as far as I could. And he starts in 2004 by stopping swearing. He's not going to curse anymore.
Start.
Right? So this is like one of the things. 2006, you know, he's still doing the signs because it's still Bush. Things are worse than ever, you know. Yeah. And one of his neighbors shoots one of his deer as a warning to him.
Bad move.
Yeah. And he really becomes more serious about getting rid of the anger. And the town is introducing ordinances against feeding deer. I mean, like, they're like anything they can do to fuck with this guy. Ordinances against putting signs on your home. So he just realizes it's coming more and more and more that he's just got to change. And the only way he can think to change is by stopping listening. He just can't know what's going on in the media anymore. And, you know, he's still he still has properties and stuff. You know, he's a good businessman. He's got tenants and things like that. And at one point he talks about one of the tenants. He's saying this to the interviewer, Sam. He's saying, one of my tenants mentioned that president that died. And President Ford was from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Sam, the interviewer, assumes that he's speaking about President Ford. And he goes, oh, well, President Ford's presidential library is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm going to go there pretty soon. And Doc says, no, not that president, the other president. So Sam puts it together. He's talking about Reagan. So he won't even say the name Reagan because he's got to keep a lid on this fury. So it's like, he has to erase these things that are undeniable truths about life from his mind and from his awareness of the continuing horror that's happening that he just can't abide. He can't abide the hypocrisy. He can't abide the lies. So he has to shut it the fuck off. And he says, my tenant said this about, and I have a lot of problems with this tenant, he said, because the guy mentioned President Ford dying.
Yeah.
So he's doing this interview late 2007, and he says to Sam, the interviewer, he says, I just assumed that, you know, Cheney got elected president.
Oh, he doesn't even know.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. There's something during the interview, because they're at a diner, there's something during the interview that comes on about Scooter Libby's trial. He puts his fingers in his ears over the radio. Puts his fingers in his ears. Can't do it. And he says this the same. He says, like, I don't know, I just assumed Cheney's president now. And Sam's like, well, you don't want to know, so I'm not going to tell you. And he goes, good.
I mean, that's knowing yourself, man. That's somebody I know myself, and I just have to tune out,
Right.
turn off.
Yeah, I just gotta stop. I just gotta stop this. Sam, the interviewer he posits in this article that this is an age where, the initial shock of punk is long worn off. And, even the resurgence 20 years later with Nirvana and Green Day, etc., it's so passé and there's all these old characters from those early days like Ian MacKaye from Minor Threat and Henry Rollins from Black Flag that are still in the media trying to seem so punk. And meanwhile, there's this guy
who's
in Michigan
being punk,
who's so fucking punk that he has to leave society and just feed deer on the back porch and not know what the fuck is going on.
That's super fucking punk.
Like, I mean, this dude is fucking for real, man.
And he's still,
wow. And this is the thing that you gotta see. He's still a guy. He's still a man with kids. Right. And when he had the shit with he still got a band. In 2004, 2003, with the signs out, you're alone. You got the fucking deer. And the deer are so, I mean, like I said, the saga of the raccoons he's so in. He has names for these guys. He's got a tree in his house he calls Frank. He goes outside, he feeds the deer in the middle of the interview, and he's like, I call this one that comes close. I call this one that comes smashing into the house, right? So he's got names for all, he knows them all, right? But in the middle of this too, like when he's diving into some kind of spirituality that he never really reveals. He calls it mysticism.
Okay.
And he feels like, like when you're alone and you know something so inherently that when somebody else asks you about it, you're like, well, you talk to them like they already know it because you know it so much.
Right.
That's kind of what he's like in this interview about his, whatever you could call it, spirituality. But at one point, he says to his kids, he's got a son and a daughter, and they'd be like my age now, like 34. So they're like, early 20s around this point, in 2007 when he gives up on stuff. And he feels like he's got to go into himself and like become some kind of monk. And he's like, tells his kids, he's like, I might need to just go away for a couple of years and really come to peace. And he's like, both of my kids said no. And they just piled it on and wouldn't shut the fuck up about no. And like he smiles and he says, and it was really cool. So he stayed in with his kids,
Yeah.
Which is like the one thing you're happy for this guy is that he at least didn't lose his kids.
It's not very punk, but it is nice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, these poor kids having to deal with this lunatic.
I can't imagine. I mean, what are they like?
I mean, yeah,
they work at a bank.
Seemingly normal kids, But I mean, that is the story of Doc Dart, and you can't really get much beyond that because
he's retreated from society.
Right.
So nobody knows his whereabouts, current location, situation.
I mean, I think he's. I mean, that's the fucking thing about this guy. Is this guy always stayed in this town?
He never left Lansing?
No.
So he was, even while he was in a band, he was always just performing locally?
No. I mean, I'm sure like the band toured and all that stuff and everything. But I mean, that was home. Home was home. And part of his thing is like, I'm still Doc Dart. I'm still named after Grandpa. I just fucking speak up.
What an arc.
I know. I mean, this thing where you just got to disappear. But you
reality's too much.
Right.
Reality's too much. I just gotta. There's that is. But for as much as he shat on Buddhists, he led a very Buddha-like lifestyle. I come from this life of privilege. I learned that it is not everything I was told it was, and I shun it, and I go out on my own to figure things out.
Right.
And then I'm feeding deer, which I think was like straight out of Buddha too, like feeding animals and bonding with the animals,
right?
And like, coming to a piece of shunning the material world.
Shunning the material world. Let me just tell you this one little bit. So Sam, the interviewer, at one point they sit down in his home, and Sam is recording with an iPod, and he says, "When I explained to Doc that this could hold hundreds of hours of interview, he's completely baffled. He doesn't know a fucking thing about this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it started as a slow retreat, and then it became an abrupt close of the door, and then, because if you learn one thing,
you're gonna learn
something else, and then you're gonna, why did that happen? And you just gotta,
he knows the pattern of, you ask too many questions, you're not gonna eventually you're gonna find an answer you don't like.
Right.
So stop asking questions.
Right.
Wow, man.
And that is our profile in eccentricity.
Fucking punk rock Buddha Doc Dart.
Yeah.
What a maniac.
Yeah, and I mean, the guy fucking had a rape crisis center built. He saw a real fucking problem
and did something about it.
Yeah, the guy with the jackass with the broken glass and the razor blades. Yeah, he improved your town.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else would have done it. It's like it had to take this guy.
He had to bribe them with winning an election to get it done.
Absolutely.
And that probably incensed him even more.
Right.
The only way I could get this common sense thing to happen was by bribing them with my 500 votes.
Yeah.
Appealing to their baser instincts of narcissism. I want to know, who are these 500 people?
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing, too, is that, I mean, if it is, you imagine you're 5th in the nation for rape. 5th. Your city is number 5 for most rapes in America. I mean, there's going to be enough people on the street that are like, this is a fucking epidemic. This is a nightmare. And nobody's talking about doing anything about it except for this fucking guy with a baseball card store. Yeah. What the hell is that about? Did you know he used to cut himself? Huh? He used to get beaten by the cops on what?
He used to call the cops on himself.
Yes! But the thing is, too, is that you have to understand, I mean, like, part of this thing is there is the real rage. The real rage, and, part of that thing when you're in that place, like, and this is the way I felt during the Bush years, is there's the rage over the knowledge of what's going on, and then there's the rage of nobody else cares.
Yeah, that's the deeper rage.
And that is the deeper thing where you go,
why is nobody else pissed about this?
Yeah, and you're going around with your head in your hands, and it's not a fun party vibe. You know what I mean? That's not a good time.
No.
And most people can, do their best to separate that. And he just couldn't. It's like, what are we doing? We're fucking playing bocce ball and these fucking people are getting slaughtered?
Yeah.
For no reason? For money? For profit? And, there's real integrity to that. And at the same time, this guy still enjoys, immense white and wealth privilege, But did he use it for good? And part of the thing too is that when 2006 comes around, he's given up. There's still signs on the house, and paint and eggs. I mean, it looks like a fucking nightmare. And then when they come with the ordinances to shut him down and shit, out of nowhere, here comes somebody from the ACLU. Here comes all these people being like, "We'll support you. We'll
yeah,
because now it's cool to hate Bush."
Yeah. And where were you 10 years ago?
That's exactly what he said to them. He's like, where the fuck were you when I was
getting my pinky broken?
It's like, I got my kids visiting here. And I'm getting attacked by the cops. I'm getting attacked by people. I'm getting death threats on my voicemail all the time. Where the fuck were you? Now you want me to say this shit?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was also his thing, too, is that he hated the cowardice of the left, justifiably.
Oh, of course.
Because now...
When it's convenient.
Yeah, now when it's convenient. When I said the thing that was not at all remotely possibly popular, you guys were nowhere.
Yeah.
And now, the war in Iraq isn't going so well.
Yeah.
And you guys are like, you should be able to say that Bush sucks. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Yeah. I was saying it when it...
He was. Yeah. And I couldn't. Could I ever do that? No.
The balls.
The balls. I mean, he's a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
Eccentric?
Did we profile him?
I think we did.
Well, then, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite eccentric. I really buying into this punk rock Buddha thing about him. I love it. Even down the inherent discontent of being that he has.
Yeah.
No matter what, he will not be happy. ACLU shows up. Not soon enough.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, he's going to be pissed about it, and I love it.
There's a thing where he said there was a very famous Klan rally in Lansing one time.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And
I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too, is that the Klan marched in Long Island in the 90s when I lived there, and you're like, what, the Klan? You forget, and militia country, Michigan, #1 militia state, I think, in the country. So the Klan are coming, and of course there's the huge counter protest. And somebody said Doc Dart was at the protest, and he started with heckling the Klan, and then he moved on to the police, and then he moved on to the other hecklers.
I love it.
Just a pain in the ass.
Yes.
And he's like, I gotta tell you, this one old guy outside my place with the signs are up. He's like, I was watching from my window, this old guy. He's like, I've never seen a guy so mad in my life. And it was so funny to me. He's reading my words and just visibly huffing and just freaking out.
This is a neighborhood.
And he's upstairs looking at him laughing. But he's going, this is the old Doc.
He's looking at the old man, seeing him.
No. He's saying the part of me that's enjoying this is the old Doc I need to get rid of. And part of this, by the way, getting rid of the old Doc was renaming himself 26.
Huh?
Yeah. He renames himself 26.
Why 26?
It came to him in a dream one time.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
By the one who comes spoke the number 26?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the weird spirituality stuff that he doesn't really get into.
Yeah.
The mysticism, as he calls it. But yeah, part of it was he goes by 26, and yeah, it's I can't think of, I don't think anybody, and punk rock is a genre for weirdos. I don't think there's been anybody as legitimately focused out there.
Right.
I mean, it's not like he knows exactly what it is. That's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not, you know what I mean?
It's not just generic ambivalence and rage out at all directions. It's focused at certain things.
Right.
Right. It's not just the general angst of punk.
Yeah. No. It's the rage towards this enduring lie that the whole thing is fake, so that you just have to give up on it.
It took him a while to figure that out.
And that's part of the thing he says, is that he's like, in a way, I would keep doing these, what do you call, social experiments, and I would just keep doing them because I wouldn't learn my lesson.
Yeah.
So I would keep needling and fucking with people and just going and doing it and just making everybody mad that he really possibly could. On all sides. Didn't matter if you were a punk, cop, politician, family.
Raccoon.
Yeah, I think they were spared the wrath.
Oh, okay.
The raccoons.
Not by me, man. Fuck those guys.
Yeah, they gotta go. No, I don't give a shit about them.
They're cute sometimes, but they are menaces.
Right, and they will steal from you.
What an eccentric profile.
Right. Did you enjoy that, Aaron?
I did. You show me the way.
I show you culture because you have none.
I have none. I am a poor, pretty white trash boy from L.A., and you bring to me knowledge from the other side.
Yes, I had to slop about in the piss and shit to bring you culture.
You still smell, but you bring forth knowledge from the dark side, and it makes me appreciate it.
I think we're about cooked here.
I think so.
I am very thankful to Sam McFeeters for writing the article that I drew extensively from.
We'll put a link up.
To Leah Kajanian for putting everything in a timeline for me. That really helped me get through.
Yeah, you're not so good with concepts and organization, so thank you, Leah, for doing that.
Exactly. And I'm very thankful to Matt Brousseau for all of his help in this podcast, which we don't deserve.
We do not deserve it.
We don't deserve it. We don't deserve nice things because we're not good people.
No. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, John, again.
Thank you, Aaron.
And thank you, Doc Dart.
Thank you, Doc Dart, for being the realest in the game.
Yeah, straight up. D-gaff. Don't give a fuck.
Thank you for listening. I'm John Fahey.
I'm Aaron Pita.
And we will see you next time.